Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, I want to talk a little bit about simplicity. Simplicity for Linux distributions, that is. And it does mean something different for new users versus those that are more experienced. So I think we're going to have to define it, a little bit differently. Uh, so, so yeah, Linux could be simple or a complete mess. It depends on which distribution you choose. Yeah, and simplicity means different things to different people. I mean, if you're new, you want kind of an easy transition, don't you? I mean, you want something that will be quick to understand, quick to pick up. You don't have to memorize a lot of stuff and try to figure out things that make absolutely no sense to you if you're coming from Windows or Mac OS. So, but if you're experienced, you probably define simplicity as efficiency. You don't want bloat. You want a small footprint, both in memory and on disk. So yeah, you don't want to take up a lot of room on your machine. You might even want to be able to support older hardware. So today we're going to break down the best Linux distros for both the new user and the experienced user. And we'll see. It's been a long time since I've been a new user, so you'll have to pardon me. I got to look back 30 years before we even get close. So I think for the best distros for the for simplicity for new users, I think the go-to has to be Linux Mint to go, the first one out of the box. So, for Windows users who just want, something familiar and stable, yeah, I think Linux Mint probably will fill the bill for you. So Linux Mint is definitely a popular choice among experienced Linux users as well. Mostly that's because it grows with you. It isn't, it's not oh, gee, after 6 months, I'm going to have to change to something completely different. No, you don't have to do that at all. It has all of the same features as some of the more advanced Linux distributions, but its strengths are stability. I mean, you're going to want that anyway. At least after a time, you will see that having the latest is not always the greatest. So, yeah, as some of us older people that have been around Linux for a while know. What about the second choice? Well, I don't personally use Zorin OS. It's something about charging for a Linux distribution that bothers me. I know it's for support, but still, it just irks me to have to fork out money for an open source product. I would rather support the development of a distro versus paying for a license to use it. But anyway, some people find it a very sleek, modern UI with a polished desktop experience. There is a free community version that you can use. You won't find all of the features in that particular version of Zorin because they would prefer that you went to the pro. Duh. That's only normal. But Zorin OS, I think you'll find, is kind of a popular choice among experienced Linux users as well. I mean, there's a lot to offer there. But I can't really speak to it directly. I can only speak to what I have read. So I will show you what it looks like, and you can make your own judgment call. How's that? Third, I think we have to look at Pop! OS because I think it's great for productivity. I think it offers. I have played games on it, and I have used it for development, and I have used it for AI stuff as well. It's very competent and able to do these things. Pop! OS draws from the Ubuntu distro, but it throws away a lot of the cruft that is invasive in Ubuntu and keeps to kind of a core line. Pop! OS is supported by System 76, which just so happens to also sell hardware. Pop! OS was designed to run their hardware. But as it turns out, because, most PC hardware is fairly commodity, it will support other hardware platforms as well, particularly if you're using CPUs and GPUs from the same bin that Pop! OS is drawing from on the System 76 side. So that's always a good way to check to see if your hardware is supported, is go see if System 76 has something similar. And they offer laptops, and they have systems that are desktop based, and they have some that are server based. They also have NUCs, and they also have high performance ARM machines. And I don't mean Raspberry Pi size. I'm talking these would be server grade machines with, I think, insane. That's insane amount of processing power. So what would be fourth? If I have to say that I looked at, somebody told me to go look at Nobara, and I did, and I was kind of impressed by it. It's pretty nice. That one is Fedora based. They use the same distribution that is current. So the current version of Nobara is the same current version of Fedora 41. But they add in additional features for gaming. They have full support if you're using controllers, and they have full support for Procyon and Lutris and Steam. So if you're looking to run your Windows games, minus the ones that, Linux has been banned by some of the companies because they can't make their anti-cheat software work with Linux for some reason. Probably because they bought it, they bought that software and didn't write it themselves. But I think Nobara is a popular choice among experienced users as well, because it isn't just the beginners that use it for gaming. It's a lot of people that use it for gaming. So what I mean is that these distributions will grow with you. So what's number 5? Well, I think you're going to get curious about Arch at some point. Somebody's going to say, by the way, I run Arch. I would think that if that's really something you want to try out, you may not want to take the step into vanilla Arch initially, because that you have to set up yourself. Yeah, they've got some scripts that will help you along the way, but the whole idea, it got kind of ridiculous for a while. It seemed like the Arch developers were trying to make it as difficult as possible to install it, just to see if, they could frustrate users. And eventually they came around and decided, well, maybe we better make this a little easier to install, because it's kind of pointless to try to, test the mettle of the people that are trying to come to it. So they have kind of made it a little bit easier for that. But personally, I don't think I would go that route as a new user, just because trying to get into vanilla Arch, you really need to have some experience under your belt, and at least be able to understand some of the Linux terminology. For example, if you go to the vanilla Arch wiki and look through the articles, you're quickly going to see that it is not assuming a beginner status. It's assuming that you already know some of the basics and you've mastered some of the things that you're going to need to make Linux work on your desktop. So it's like you get there and you go, wait, where's the rest of the story? It looks like I'm starting in the middle of the book. And you sure are. If you are curious about Arch, there are a number of Arch releases. That is, there are other distros that are based on Arch, like EndeavourOS is one of them. There are others, and you certainly can try those as well. This is one I've had personal experience with, and so it's the one I go to whenever I'm looking to test new hardware. And by what I mean by testing new hardware, it's like last June, I think it was, when I purchased the Snapdragon Elite X Elite, and was trying to get it to work under Linux. I turned to Arch first because the updates to the kernel had the device drivers that I needed in order to be able to start testing things out. I had used EndeavourOS previously on Intel's Meteor Lake, and of course, Intel's migration into Linux was a lot smoother. One, they know what they're doing. Two, they're already involved with the Linux kernel folks. And three, it took them from they released the machine in December of 2023. They already had it up and running by the 19th of January fully. So just in one, to be honest, they had started working on it back, I think, in April of 2023, well before the release of the Meteor Lake CPU. But it only took them a month to get the rest of it working, and it was fully functional a month later. I didn't have any devices that I can remember that didn't work. They all worked, audio, everything. Have used Endeavour to play around with eGPUs and experiment with that, both headless ones and regular graphics cards as well. And it today it's a lot easier than it was when I started working with it, because now they have an ISO file that already has the NVIDIA drivers in it too. Seems like a lot of them are starting to adopt that flow. Before anyone asks, I run Fedora. Why aren't I recommending Fedora to a beginning user? It's not that, you can't. You can if you want to, but I just think that when you get into rolling releases, and Fedora is a partial rolling release, they roll the kernel, they update packages. There's a periodicity that they go by when they do updates, but you might start out on Fedora 41, for example, if you had started back in October, and you would have had a kernel 6.11 back then. Right now, the same version of Fedora 41, is at 6.13. So why is that a problem? Well, if you're running something like DaVinci Resolve, they have, on Linux, they have these modules that are called DKMS modules. That requires a compile of the kernel and the DKMS modules in order to fit them in. So it doesn't actually compile the kernel. It takes some of the source code from the kernel and it mixes it in with the DKMS modules from Blackmagic Design. So a lot of times Blackmagic Design will limit which versions of the kernel that their DKMS is designed to work with. And so if you get too far beyond that, it'll fail. And so then you'll be without DaVinci Resolve unless you're happening to run one of Fedora's immutable OSs, and you can roll the kernel back to an earlier release where your DaVinci Resolve was working. But if you're on a normal desktop, you're probably going to have to wait for Blackmagic to catch up. And if you're doing weekly videos and you're trying to do edits, and that's not, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy with that. So what about for an experienced user? Now, before we go here, you're going to find that I'm eliminating certain other distributions which I consider expert level. So you won't find things like Void, Linux from scratch. You won't find any of those kinds of things. So sorry about that, but those I think are expert, and I'm not going to talk about those today. The first choice here would be Arch. And it doesn't matter if you're using vanilla Arch or some other version or variant of Arch. Why do people use Arch? They use it because they get more control over what is installed on their machines. They can once they get the baseline built, they have a number of ways they can go. You can go the route of running a regular desktop environment like KDE or GNOME or XFCE, LXQT. So or Mate. There's a bunch of them you can run there. Or You can go the other way and really go a minimalist view and set up an X window manager with an X Windows system under it, so that you can, like a baseline that allows you to modify and control how your desktop ends up looking. So basically, you're building your own desktop environment from scratch. You can pull in whatever applications you want to fill in search and display your application list, do updates, pull from a store, all those kinds of things. You can pick and choose from all the ones that are available. So yeah, you can get yourself in a lot of different ways of getting into trouble. So basically, yeah, you can do that. There's also the AUR. The AUR is for libraries and packages that don't make it into the baseline Arch repos. Now, Arch has, I think there's 3 or 4 repos, community, free, and a couple others I think that they maintain. If you're looking for a package that's missing, chances are it's in the AUR. But I would caution you, if you're starting out brand new on Arch, be careful of the AUR. That's the Wild West. You do not know who put what out there unless you happen to have somebody coaching you along the way. So yeah, anybody and malware has come through the AUR before. So just be aware of that. That if you don't know what you're doing, be careful that you check thoroughly that these people have been submitting other packages for a while. Yeah, you probably don't want somebody that just showed up, a day earlier is posting a major package, and you're going, how come this is out here now? So yeah, that would be a sign of something to maybe check further into. But I'm going to recommend Slackware. So I don't hear too many YouTubers talking about Slackware, at least not as a recommendation for experienced users. Slackware could easily be on the expert side as well. So, but I think that here's the reason why I'm putting it here. Slackware is the last real Linux distro. I don't count any of these new arrivals as being true Linux distros. Maybe that's elitist. Maybe that's just a feeling of knowing where things came from. So Slackware started out, they started building, I think in 93, they released their first version, I believe in 94, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm doing this from memory. There was SLS that came before them, and Slackware kind of, I don't know if they borrowed the code or just used it as inspiration, but it was SLS that formed the ideas behind building Slackware. Slackware is a purist distribution, more so than Arch. They go beyond where Arch is. So first of all, you won't find things like no systemd. Why? They don't fix what ain't broke. And so they adhere to that. They don't just build stuff for the sake of building new stuff. It has to be replacing something that either broke, is no longer supported. Those are the reasons why you would find changes in Slackware. So the other thing is you won't find duplicate packages. There's no bloat in Slackware. They just don't do it. And the other thing is they adhere to the Unix philosophy. There are hardly any Linux distros that are. Slackware is one of them. The other approach that Slackware has, they recommend instead of installing just a few packages, they recommend you install all of them. Wait, all of them? Well, all of them that are in their repo. So why is that? Well, they don't bother with trying to sort through and figure out what libraries are going to collide. You see, they have collapsed all of that. If you look at, I guess we could get into a real long discussion here, but if you get into all of the bill of materials that makes up a software stack in Linux, it's insane. All the interdependencies that occur. I mean, do you remember a few years ago where there was a glibc issue that boiled up into corrupting even the log files in Linux, and it got into those systems that monitor log files for intrusion detection, and it got into all kinds of things. It must have, I don't know, it took them a full year, just about, to track down every single place where that single start at the very bottom of the bill of materials, and how it cascaded through literally thousands of applications. So that's what Slackware is trying to avoid, is that nonsense. So they aren't concerned about about overlapping libraries because they don't allow it. So that's why they say install everything up. If you create an overlap in the library, it's because you compiled something. So it's on you. You broke it. They didn't. So there's two more things that you should know about Slackware. These are hints that you need to know. First thing is you should always, and you should do this on any Linux distribution really, make sure your home directory is on not just a completely different partition, but a completely different disk. And the reason for that, it will become apparent in a second. The other one you want to capture is user local. Because if you're missing a package on Slackware, you're probably going to go out, download the source, and compile it. Well, when you do your make install, that's going to go generally into user local bin and user local lib. And all the others that are there too, Etsy, Share, there's a bunch of them underneath that particular directory. If those are on different disks, then you can throw away Slackware if things get twisted up and reinstall. No problem, because you still got your data, you still got all the code that you worked on. So it just comes right back together again, done. So Slackware, I think, is a I don't know if it's a popular choice, but it's certainly, you'll find experienced users definitely sticking with it. If you use Slackware, you are going to learn Linux. Let me tell you, it isn't that it's unforgiving. It's this, that it's if you want to get down in the depths of it, they have a really nice manual that covers everything. It starts you with the installation. It makes recommendations to you on how to do things. Pay attention to that. Those recommendations will save you hours of headaches later. Fedora, I think, is a next one for experienced users. And in this case, I think if you want a modern Linux without the chaos of what you'll find in rolling releases all by themselves, Fedora is a good choice because it sort of anchors off a lot of that. They don't take a new kernel build immediately. You might see it. It could show up anytime between a week and maybe two. I have seen it go on a little longer than that if they find bugs, and so they make sure that it's going to operate before they just stick a new kernel on Fedora. But you'll find that it's cutting edge. It has a wide range of support for new hardware, and it will help if you have machines that are not, and with devices that are not directly supported, that maybe are coming along. You'll find them in Fedora. They'll show up there, even though they probably that support appeared on Arch first. And EndeavourOS kind of lags behind Vanilla Arch by a few days. They also curate a bit too before they allow any of the new packages to enter into their repos. Just be ready. The updates for Fedora come pretty frequently and pretty fast, daily in some cases. So you may want to adopt a schedule where you're doing updates maybe once a week at least. And I would adopt that same mentality on Arch as well. But you'll find Fedora used by experienced users. What about Debian stable? Well, that's a good place for experienced users. You might find it. Debian goes through about a 2-year interval, so they are released that is dedicated to stability. Period. Just like Linux Mint. So you won't find them upgrading the packages as they become available. They just don't do that. Not on the stable side anyway. They're rock solid. They're predictable. There are interim releases that happen. Like I think 12 is now on 0.6 or 7 right now. And it is at that point release they may update a few things. Mostly those updates are going to be security related. They'll first backport the security patch in, and then it'll follow the chain of the regular package versions to get back into the system later. So first priority is make sure that the security vulnerability is fixed. Then secondarily, get the package in with its appropriate number, because backporting maintains the same number. But you will not find kernel updates going in. No, they don't do that. They only do kernel updates when they change the major version. What about openSuSe? They're on my list. There are 2 choices here. I will be showing Tumbleweed today. Tumbleweed is a rolling release. Leap is a more traditional versioned controlled release. So you have one for those people that want the latest and greatest, and Leap is for those that want stability. And yeah, so it's a great choice for either of those things. I still think it is. I mean, they were the first to put together what they call YAST, which is a full administrator suite that allows you to manage the machine, every aspect of it. openSuSe, either Tumbleweed or Leap, it's a popular choice among experienced users. It's not quite as frequently found today as it used to be. I think a lot of people have lost interest in the green, but there are a few diehards that still use it. And I did use it for a while. Yeah, that was what is now their enterprise project. Used to be their open source project, but they decided to go the route of Red Hat and charge a fee for their enterprise version of it. It's support again. So there you have it. Those are my choices. I think that I think simplicity means, as we started out, means different things to different people. If you want a system that just works, you have a lot of options, 600 of them. But you will notice one thing: some of them chain deeply off of others, but the ones that are at the fork, so to speak, no pun intended, but at the fork in the road at the beginning, SLS is gone, Slack is still here, Slackware is still here, Red Hat is still here, openSuSe is still here, Debian is still here. Those were the source for most of the distributions. Guess I better cover Ubuntu. You might wonder, how come they're not on the list? They're on everybody else's. Well, I have a hard time recommending Ubuntu anymore. I mean, if you're on a server, yeah, use it. It's great. But if you're on a workstation, it's getting weird. I mean, the snap thing is getting so far out of control. The people that are uninstalling Snap right now are I don't know when this will be, but at some point they're going to be uninstalling the entire operating system because everything is going underneath the Snap umbrella. Canonical is definitely pushing down that road. If you look in the packages in the repository about how many of them are actually Snap, it is scary how many of those things are Snap. It's not that I'm against Snap. It's just that I'm kind of worried about one that is controlled by a single vendor. It's, the Snap store is totally controlled by Ubuntu. You don't get to know how it works. You can't stand up your own. You have to push everything to them. I realize that partially is controlled, but if Canonical were to go under, all that's gone. So yeah, that is kind of a scary way to go. So yeah, that's why I don't recommend them. So I'll just say it that way. So drop your thoughts in the comments below. What ones you think should have been on the list. The Nix OS, not the Nix package manager, but the Nix OS really is more for cookie cutter enterprise type development. Cloud would benefit from Nix OS because Nix OS, you build your view of the system from a single file. You basically fill out this long form of what you want the system to be comprised of. And when you want to stand up that exact copy, you just run your install against that parameter file and boom, you get exactly what you asked for. It may not be what you want, but you get what you wrote. And then once you're satisfied, you can keep doing that repetitively until you get the system that you really wanted. And once you have that, you can just lift that parameter file to the next machine and create an exact copy. So that's what it's really meant for, is if you're in an enterprise environment where you need to build out a whole bunch of Unix workstations, Nix OS is great. What about the server side? Absolutely. You could do the same there. So yeah, I mean, it just makes sense that that would be on the expert side. Yeah, so tell me in your what your thoughts are down below. I would love to read those. And with that, I'm done. I hope to see you in the next video, and bye for now.